Hey guys, Pro1701 here, and today we are going to be ranking the Doctor Who animations thus far. I am only going to be looking at the 60 stories. I'm not going to include Shada, because it's kind of its own thing. So I'm going to discount Shada and just look at the missing 60 stories. At the time of this recording, Galaxy 4 has been officially announced but has not come out yet, so I won't be including that naturally. So we're going to be looking at the 11 stories from the 60s between the first and second Doctor that have been released thus far. And number 12, to no surprise to anyone who is familiar with my channel, is Fury from the Deep. The animation to this just looks rushed, it looks bad, I don't like the style they chose for it, that cartoony, not realistic look at all. Victoria's character looks terrible. The animation for Troughton looks terrible. The mannerisms some of the characters take don't match the mannerisms those characters would normally take. Jamie looks good. I will say that. Jamie's character looks good. I don't like that they make the rooms look too big because it doesn't fit the claustrophobic tone that this story is supposed to have. The areas in the story are supposed to be small and enclosed, not have room to breathe. And that's the biggest problem, is that the animation doesn't match the tone of the story at all. This is a very famous story. It's very popular. It's got a great reputation. It's supposed to be creepy, scary, sends you hiding behind the sofas, and the animation doesn't convey that at all. I keep expecting to see a giant brown Great Dane run in going, Raggy, Raggy, where are the ruby snacks? Where are the ruby snacks? You know? It doesn't fit the serious tone of it. And the best example of that is a few scenes, a few little clips survive, including the clip from the story of Mr. Oak and Mr. Quill attacking, was it Maggie Harris, is that her name, when they attack and gas her. If you watch the actual surviving footage of that, and then watch the animation of that, the animation looks like a parody by comparison. It's like the animated version of The Curse of Fatal Death compared to regular Doctor Who. It's a comedy. The original versions, the surviving footage of it is very scary, very creepy. Like they're forcing themselves on her, basically. It's all sorts of connotations going on in that scene. But the animated version is just laughable by comparison. And I feel like that's probably how the whole story is. The animation is just awful and really lets the story down in my eyes. Next on the list is Web of Fear. The Web of Fear animation was actually made me nauseous the first 3 or 4 minutes I was watching it. Like my stomach started feeling weird. I don't know what it was. Like I almost had to stop watching it. And that and the weird movements, the exaggerated movements were kind of weird. Now, both of those things I adjusted to over the course of the episode. By the end of it, the little wasn't bothering me as much. I acclimated to it. I wouldn't want to watch a whole story like that where it is now, but as just one episode in a 6-parter, especially fairly early on in the story, I was fine. You know, I'd much prefer it to the telesnap reconstruction, so I am glad they did it. It was a great chance for them to kind of start with the technology. It was a great testing area. I really hope they move on to doing that again with Underwater Menace, so they can practice with it some more and hopefully perfect it, so by the time they get to stuff like Master Plan and Highlanders, it'll look considerably better. But it wasn't good, but as a starting point for one episode in a 6-parter, it's fine. Next up on the list, honestly enough, is 10th Planet. The animation itself, I don't mind. I really like Planet 55's animation style they used back then, that kind of theta animation, I think it's called. I like that. It looks very realistic, much more so than any other animation attempts. But what kills me here is the way the camera angles are in it. It's really jarring going, excuse me, from 3 live-action episodes where the cameras all work like 60s cameras would, to the final animated episode where the camera work is totally different. And I found it very jarring jumping into episode 4, and it kind of dampened my enjoyment of it, even though the actual animation style itself is really good. But because of the camera work, it really pulls it down for me. Next on the list is the Ice Warriors. I think this one of the old animations, the kind of pre-power ones, looks the most like what we have now. And the animation is really good. My real complaint is the Ice Warriors themselves, especially when they're talking, look a little weird and cardboard cutout-y. But the human characters look really good. Troughton actually does really look like Troughton. I actually like the human characters a lot. This one probably gets lower points just because the story itself isn't quite that interesting, so I don't really pay attention as much. But I did think the animation looked pretty good, except for the Ice Warriors. Next on the list is the Invasion, and this is the one that kind of moves around the list a lot. I really had trouble placing the Invasion. I mean, on one hand, I want to cut it a little slack because it was the first one, and on the other hand, they reuse a lot of the same angles a lot. Like, you see a lot of the characters talking from the same angles, like Troughton like this or Jamie like this. You see that a lot. But again, it was the first one to get animated, and it was several years after that before the next one got animated. I think Invasion was like 2006, so way before any of the others. And the animation works. It's a little wonky in a couple places, like when they're boating, and then that in episode 4, the kind of helicopter escape's a little wonky to keep up with what's going on. But it works. It's fine. I don't dislike it by any means. I think it serves its purpose, especially since it's only 2 episodes and an 8-parter. It's fine. It does kind of move around on the list. I had a heck of a time between it and Ice Warriors, which one to put ahead of the other. They can almost flip-flop. Next on the list at number 6 is the Reign of Terror. I actually really like the Reign of Terror. Again, I like that theta animation. The characters look very recognizable because there's so much detail in the faces with that style Planet 55 was using. The Doctor really looked like the Doctor. Again, the camera work is a little wonky here, like in 10th Planet, but for me it doesn't bother me as bad, especially since both the animated episodes are right there together. I didn't really have trouble adjusting from the live action of episode 3 to the animation of 4 and 5. I adjusted that very quickly. I did have trouble adjusting back to the live action for episode 6, I will say that. I had a little trouble going. I got so used to watching the animated 4 and 5 that when I got back to episode 6 with it being live action, it did take me some mental adjusting to. But I still do like that style of animation a lot. Number 5 on the list is the Power of the Daleks, and this is the special edition. I'm not going to include the regular edition on here just because, for me, the special edition is better in pretty much every regard, except for one scene. I do like the original better, but that's another story. I think the special edition really did give the team making it the chance to do what they wanted to do. The original 2016 production was so rushed because they had to meet that original airtime deadline, 50 years after the original episode aired. And it shows where they had to rush it. I really like the animation. It's a lot more fluid. The Daleks look phenomenal. The Daleks, I love the 3D look they do for the Daleks. Troughton looks like Troughton. I'm glad they switched to the gray pants for the special edition because that weird tartar or tartan, whatever you call it, looks weird in animated form. So I actually really like them switching to the gray pants, plus it's more consistent with the other animations. And I like the fact that they added stuff like Lesterson's death now actually looks a little more believable, and when characters are getting killed and laying on the ground at the end, they're not just standing up but turned horizontal. It really does add a lot of detail, and everything moves a lot smoother. You don't really notice it until you go on YouTube and see side-by-side comparisons. You're like, oh yeah, that's a lot better. But I really did enjoy the special edition of Power of the Daleks. Not only is the story good, but the animation's really good. Number 4 on the list is the Faceless Ones. I like the Faceless Ones a lot. Now, it is a step back from Macra. I will say that. I noticed that the first time I watched Faceless Ones. It is a step back from Macra. It's not as fluid as Macra, but it's still really good. I really like when BBC Studios works on a project. They seem like the ones that are on their A game. It's really, really good. I like the colored version. I like the black and white version. I like that they started cropping the black and white version to 4:3 so it looks a little more accurate. I actually really enjoy that. I like both versions of the story, but I do prefer the black and white version because I like to watch it with the surviving episodes. And as good as the animations are, they still don't quite live up to the surviving episodes. Faces Ones is interesting because since we have a couple surviving episodes, we can compare the surviving episodes with the animated episodes. And the animated episodes, of course, aren't as good as the surviving episodes, but it is still really good. I still really enjoy, especially since the Faceless Ones isn't exactly the best story itself. The animation really does carry it through. Number 3 is Evil of the Daleks. I really liked Evil of the Daleks. I have watched the black and white version of it. I really enjoyed it. I'm right in the middle of watching the color version of it. I've watched the first 4 episodes of the color version. And again, they're different viewing experiences. From what I've seen, I like both. I probably prefer the black and white version because I do like watching the surviving episode 2. Because again, the surviving episode 2, for the most part, does beat out the animated episode 2. Though I do like how they added some stuff like the camera work moving around the house, and when they first go into the lab for the first time. That's some pretty neat little camera work they did in the animation. But just some of the nuances in Troughton's face, like in the scene in the laboratory before the Dalek first shows up, when Patrick's figuring out what's going on, you see him getting more and more worried. That doesn't come across quite as well in the animation just because of the limited scope of the animation. Whereas in the original footage, you can see the growing concern and fear almost on his face. But I do think it's a step up from Faceless Ones. For me, Evil is between Faceless Ones and Macroterra. Like Macroterra, Faceless Ones, Evil's right there in the middle between it. It really is a step up from Faceless Ones while still having a similar look to Faceless Ones, which is great. You can tell it's done by the same studio. And it's great since both stories go back to back. You can actually go from watching Faceless Ones to watching Evil of the Daleks, and they look very consistent. They have a very consistent look to them, which I really like. I'm really impressed that Evil looks as good as it does. It truly is a great Doctor Who story. This is my first time to watch it, see it, hear it, etc. So I really liked it. Number 2 on the list, and this could be the objective number 1, but just going subjectively by favorites, this is number 2 on the list is the Macroterra. I love the Macroterra's animation. It is so good. It's so fluid. I forget sometimes I'm looking at 2D characters. The way they move when they turn their heads and the way they move their arms seems very lifelike, very fluid. It doesn't look choppy like some of the others where, it's like I can tell I'm looking at 8 different, looks panned together. It feels like one smooth motion. And I think a lot of that is down to Sun and Moon Studios, and I wish the BBC would get them back. I get they're expensive, and I get they haven't gotten them back because Macroterra probably didn't make the money they wanted. That's not because Sun and Moon Studios did anything wrong. That's because it's the Macroterra, and Macroterra wasn't exactly one of those stories with the best reputation people cared about. So they probably didn't pull out in droves to buy it like they would have, say, Fury from the Deep or Evil of the Daleks. But I think because Macroterra's animation is so good, and because of the creative choices the team made to improve the story, that Macroterra really has gone up in people's estimation. Because I think much like how Enemy of the World didn't have the best reputation, and then it got found, and now it has a much better reputation, it really has been reevaluated. I think a lot of people have done the same thing with Macroterra. I think a lot of people didn't think much of Macroterra. I didn't even know Macroterra existed until Gridlock. I saw Gridlock, and it mentions the Macro. We see the Macro. And then I did some research and found out about Macroterra. I had never heard of it. It wasn't a story I heard fans talk about. It was just, kind of one of those like space pirates you never really hear about. But now that it's come out in animated form, I hear a lot of other people rave about how good the animation is. And I truly think the animation has saved Macroterra. I think it is the one Doctor Who story where the animation has improved over the live action. It's the one case where if I had to choose between the original episodes and the animation, I'd rather watch the animation. Going off what footage we've seen, what that's left of the original production, and the reputation the original production had. Because it did seem like one of those kind of B-movie giant insect ones, like the 50s movies with the giant ants and spiders, etc., etc. It seemed a lot like that, whereas the choices the animation team made really makes it genuinely creepy and scary, and the music in it really fits some of the stuff we're seeing on screen, like when you see the Macro just come out with their eyes glowing in the darkness, and when the light is shining off of that one at the end of episode 1 and is towering over them. It truly makes the cliffhangers terrifying. I actually do think Macroterra is the one story where if they never find any of the original episodes, I'm okay with that. I mean, I would mind if they found them, but if they didn't, I think I'm okay. Because I think this is the one case where I'm pretty sure the animated version is going to be superior. It's so good. I love the creative choices they made. I'm glad they didn't try to make it rigidly like the original, like some of them do. I really, really enjoy it. And just, again, the effort and money put into the animation just makes it top-notch. And then number 1 on my list is the Moonbase. Again, I love Planet 55's animation style. I love how detailed the characters look. Planet 55, more so than anyone else, the characters look like the characters. Patrick Troughton looks like Patrick Troughton. And all of the others as well, to one degree or another. I do believe the one guy who plays like the leader of the Moonbase doesn't quite look right, but all the others look right. The Cybermen look terrifying. The Cybermen look better in the animated parts than they do in the live-action parts. And the scenes when they're walking on the moon, look creepier and scarier in the animation than they do in the live action part. Now, I still prefer the live action parts for the actors and stuff, but in the parts just showing shots of the Cybermen, a lot of times the animation has gone to great lengths to make them look even creepier, scarier, inhuman, more threatening than the live action pulls off. Although, again, Troughton being Troughton and doing so much with his face and with his acting, the surviving episodes still win. And episode 1 and 3 of Moonbase are two of the episodes I want recovered more than anything, because I love watching Troughton in this story. He's so good in episodes 2 and 4. So even though the animation for the human characters is really, really good, the best we've ever had in my opinion, I still don't think it quite lives up to the live action stuff, because Troughton just so good. God, he's so good in that cliffhanger for episode 2, which I've gone on about 1,000,000 times. I just love him, and it's one of my favorite cliffhangers in Doctor Who. And the camera work is really good here. I think the camera work is really improved over Reign of Terror and 10th Planet. I think it more matches with the live action footage. It's never jarring for me jumping back and forth. And there's a lot of jumping back and forth because the odd number episodes are missing and the even numbers exist. So you go from animation to live action to animation to live action. It never feels jarring. I adjust almost immediately to it. So the Moonbase is my personal favorite animation that we've gotten thus far. So, what is your favorite animation? What is your least favorite animation? Let me know your list. I would like to know what you think, so comment down below and let me know. Other things to do, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the, check down on my Patreon. I lost my train of thought there. Click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications. That's where I was going with that, so you never miss out on a new video. I also have a Patreon down in the links below. You'll find, I cannot talk today. I've got this light shining right in my eye because I'm trying it with the light on and I'm not liking it.